Hi, and welcome to this workshop on evaluating sources for assignments. In this workshop, you'll learn how to apply evaluation strategies to resources to ensure they are high quality and fit for purpose. You'll also learn the difference between primary and secondary sources. Before we begin, I'd just like to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that this video is being recorded on today. QUT acknowledges the Turrbal and Yagara as the First Nations owners of the lands where QUT now stands. We pay respects to their elders, laws, customs, and creation spirits, and we recognize that these lands have always been places of teaching, research, and learning. QUT acknowledges the important role that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people play within the QUT community. Let's jump in with a quick exercise. How do you evaluate your sources? Pause this video and take a moment to think about your usual strategies. Okay, got them? Now that you have those strategies in your mind, let's take a look at some more strategies that we can add to your evaluation toolkit. The content of this workshop and this section comes from QUT Library Study Smart, specifically Module 3.1.2. In this section, we're going to go through 4 criteria. And these criteria are going to assist you in evaluating whether your source is appropriate for use in your assignment. First up is authority, and authority regards the authorship and publication of a work. When you're looking at the authority, you'll want to consider who created the work and what their credentials and affiliations are. You may also want to consider who the publisher is. Finding this information isn't too difficult, thankfully, and you can use your preferred search engine to search the publisher or the author to find any affiliations, levels of education and expertise, or known biases. Specifically for authors, authors can be individuals, a group of people, or even a corporate organization. So having a look into what their biases may be can be very important in some circumstances. For example, if your resource is coming from a politician, you may want to know where they sit in the political field. You'll want to consider looking for official websites, such as academic or professional organization profiles, as these will detail the level of expertise and education of the author or authors that you are currently looking at. In the case of corporate organizations, if there are any controversies surrounding their views, these can also come up quite easily when you're using a search engine. Let's use this article from Healthline as an example. When we look at the authors of this article, we can see that it was primarily written by Rachel Knoll, but it's been medically reviewed by Dr. Dina Kuravilla. When we look at Rachel's profile, we can see that she has been a freelance medical writer since 2004 and is currently working as a nurse. However, Dr. Kuravilla is a neurologist, and when we had a search online, we can see that she is the medical director of Westport Headache Institute, and she has had conference proceedings before, so she definitely knows what she's talking about. From an authorship point of view, we can trust this article and what it says. Let's have a look at our next criteria, currency, and this relates to when the information or resource was created. You'll want to consider when the resource was published, if it's up to date, and if there's a more recent release. Now, for all of that, you may actually want to think about whether currency is important to your information need. If you're studying health, you'll likely need to find your information needs to be quite recent, say to the last 5 years. However, if you're studying mathematics, you may find that information from even 100 years ago is just as important to your needs. Depending on the resource, there will be different ways to check for currency. For example, for books, you'll want to check for a publication date and whether or not it's been reprinted or has any new editions. For websites, you'll want to check if the copyright or last updated date is available. These can often be found in the footer of a website or sometimes at the top or bottom of articles. Here we have a couple of examples of where you could find the dates to check for currency and resources. On the left, we have The Language of Flowers, and this one was published in 1834. Now, The Language of Flowers doesn't really change, and a bit of searching would have probably already told you that if you were using it for your assignment, so you could safely say that using this resource from 1834 would be appropriate. On the top right, we have an ebook, and we can see that this ebook was first published in 2020. It doesn't state any further information about reprinting or additional editions, so we can safely say that was a good one to choose. And on the bottom right, we have a website. This website has a last updated date. We can see that's the 4th of August 2021. Whenever possible, try and use the last updated date, as whole websites can change their copyright date from year to year, even if the information on a specific web page is many years old. For this particular one, the information could change, so it's really important to know when it was last updated in case potentially something has been changed and this page hasn't updated yet. Our next criteria are purpose and objectivity. And these refer to why the information was created and how unbiased it is. You'll want to consider what the purpose of the information is and why it was created. You'll also want to see if you can detect any bias. Does it attempt to appeal to your emotions through use of emotive language or images? To check this, identify what demographic the information is aimed at and the genre. This can often be done by analyzing the language or the structure of a piece and identifying any perspectives or biases present in the text. Understanding what purpose and objectivity mean to different resources can be a little bit to get your head around, so we'll use the examples we have on the next slide to discuss it a bit more. On these 3 examples, we have the same topic area, which is sustainability. However, the purpose or objectivity of each of these examples is very different. On the left, we have Sustainability Victoria's Avoid Waste at Home page. This is a government website, and we can see that this provides quite a bit of useful information of what we can do to avoid waste at home. When we look at the center example, 10 hacks for a more sustainable kitchen, we can also think that this purpose is to reduce that waste at home. However, notice that these are items or potentially products that this particular site is pushing for you to purchase. So there is a different motive here. These might have a sustainability focus, but in the end, it's asking you to purchase something to help with that. And depending on the site, there may be affiliate links, which means that the site gets a little bit of money every time you click through and purchase something upon their recommendation. On the right, we have an article from The Guardian, just 50 simple ways to make your life greener. Now, when we look at the contents of this one, we can see that there's likely going to be a few different things in here that are both informative but also products, and you'll likely find that any products mentioned in the article will also link out. Now, depending on your purposes, any of these 3 might be a good fit for you. For example, if you are looking at making some sustainable swaps in your kitchen, you might find this center example very useful for you to get ideas. However, if you're writing an assignment on sustainability and how Australian households can reduce their impact, that might not be the most appropriate choice, and you may instead want to select the Sustainability Victoria resource. Our final criteria is reliability, and this refers to how much you can trust the information provided. You'll want to consider if you can verify the facts presented. And in research context, can that research be replicated? Is there enough information about how the data was gathered and analysed? If it's a journal or a journal article, is it peer-reviewed? To check, go straight to the references whenever it comes to research. This should include reputable authors in relevant fields. And information already located in previous criterion may have already answered these questions of reliability, so by the time you reach this stage in your evaluation, you may not even need to consider it anymore. Let's take a look at an example here. So we can see at the top left that this article is peer-reviewed, which is fantastic. So that's already a massive tick in its box. When we have a look at the article information, just under the title we have all of the authors listed, and every author has their affiliations listed, so you don't need to search each and every one individually. And we can see from looking at their affiliations that, yes, all of these authors are very much experts in their field, and absolutely it looks like we can trust the findings of this article. We can also see by the diagrams that they've thoroughly looked at their data, and they do explain their data in the figure caption, We don't expect you to go out and look for the original data sets or try and replicate this research itself, but just having a read through and having a look at how everything is explained can also help in seeing whether or not that data actually makes sense. And if something doesn't feel right, it likely very isn't right. Finally, we can see here the declaration of competing interest and the acknowledgements. These are really important sections, especially to see if this research may have been funded by industry, which sometimes can have biases. Overall, I think we can say that this article is very reliable. Before we move on, I just want to discuss how a resource that you found may have passed your evaluation with flying colours, but it might still not be the best reference for you to use in your resource. And this is all based on contexts. For this example, I've chosen the word compound, and I've taken this from the Merriam-Webster dictionary. Now, Merriam-Webster is very reputable, and I'm sure we can all agree on that, and we can agree that the definitions are lovely and clear. However, these wouldn't be appropriate for a discipline-specific definition. For those particular definitions, you'll want to go to a discipline-specific text. Compounding can mean different things in pharmacy, accounting, linguistics, and manufacturing, so you want to be as specific as possible in your assignment. Okay, now that you're equipped and ready to go with all of your new evaluation strategies, and don't forget to bring your old ones in, let's try this activity. So this activity is based on two different resources. Dung beetles use the Milky Way for orientation, and the dihydrogen monoxide FAQ. Both of these resources are available free online, and you can use the QR codes on screen to access them. You can also use the links displayed below. What I would like you to do for this particular activity is compare the two articles using your new strategies and see what you come up with. So, press pause and have a look at what you find. Okay, hopefully you've been able to have a look through those resources and you've got a couple of giggles out of each. I won't spoil which is which, but I'm sure you by now have figured out which one should not be trusted and which one, even if a bit weird, is very trustworthy. This next section of content comes from Module 1.3.1 of QUT Library Study Smart and focuses on primary and secondary sources. Knowing whether a resource is primary or secondary can be important in your assignment, but if you're unsure whether or not it matters in your context, make sure to ask your teaching team. Knowing the difference between a primary and secondary resource may not always be the most important thing on your mind when you are evaluating a source, but it's good to have this information either way, just in case you need it. Let's get started. Primary sources come directly from the source or the person, and they are the original materials not filtered through any explanation. Some examples of this are listed here and can include statistics, diaries, newspaper articles when written at the time of event, photographs, statutes, empirical journal articles, and I'll explain a bit more about those in a second, or original research finding books. Here we have a few examples of those primary resources. We can see the Australian Bureau of Statistics here, which is data, very much a primary resource, a photograph of City Hall in Brisbane, some music, some biographies, a book of original research, an article specifically from the time of Expo 88, and an empirical journal article. Now, empirical journal articles are based on documented observation or experience rather than by theory or logic. So these articles report on original research findings drawn from experiments or trials that have been run by the author or authors. Next up, we have secondary sources, which analyze, interpret, and comment on primary information. So these could be journal articles that are synthesizing information, summarizing the finding of others, books which provide topic overviews, newspaper articles when offering commentary opinions, literature reviews, or encyclopedias. And here we have some more examples. We have some books here which contain quite a broad range of information from many different sources, so our secondary. We have an opinion piece from Expert 88 to throw back to our original set of examples, and another one just below that. And we have 2 journal articles as well, which are more focusing on the theory over original research findings. Thank you so much for watching this workshop, and I hope it was helpful to you. Remember, help is available. If you're a QUT student who is watching this, you can go to library.qut.edu.au/help to view more of your help options.